Thanks. Urban gardening. That term might sound new and trendy, but it's actually nothing new. Growing produce in cities is the way that agriculture started 10,000 years ago in some of the earliest settlements. And the things you know of as raised garden beds with densely planted crops and lots of composting to produce super high yielding production, those aren't new either. Those were invented in the crowded neighborhoods of Paris in the 1800s. And even as recently as World War I and World War II, half of the produce consumed in the United States was grown in private backyard gardens and public parks as a way to ease some of the burdens on the mechanical and transportation industries during the war. What has changed is in the last 100 years, there's been a rather quick shift due to the cheap cost of energy. There's been a shift in having our food system has turned more into one of food distribution, where food often makes its way to you over the course of what could be thousands of miles. And as a result, you don't really know, you can tell where something was grown by a little sticker, but you don't know who grew it, or how they grew it, or when they grew it. So you can't tell how fresh something is, and you can't often tell if you really paid the best price. Maybe it would have been cheaper and certainly fresher if it was grown closer to you. Yet, meanwhile, we have this culture, particularly in North America, of maintaining a grassy green yard around our house that's kind of unnatural and kind of unuseful, other than if you have little kids or dogs, maybe. So what I decided to do to get more connected to my food last summer, I decided to spend one growing season outside Philadelphia. I live in an urban lot, small single-family home on a quarter acre with a small backyard, but plenty of sunlight. So I chose the sunniest corner and decided to grow my own produce for one season. And since I recently had switched to a largely plant-based diet, for me that meant I'm growing pretty much all my own food. So I tried this, but I'm a complete amateur. I've never grown anything, nothing that has lived more than a week or so. So where do you first go when you're an amateur and you need to learn something? Other than taking Tio's pills, yes, you go and Google. So I spent days on and off, did all my research, found some great online tools, free tools for planning out your layout and your spacing of different plants you want to grow and when to plant them. And I printed out my plans and I went into the local garden center and they were thrilled to help me fill in the rest of all the knowledge I needed and sent me home with not only all the materials, but of course the plants. And I got home, I built my raised beds, as you can see here on the left, and ordered a truckload of dirt, 6 cubic yards, and got some neighbors to help me shovel it into, and load it up, fill out my schedule of plantings, and water, and wait, and water, and wait. And after about 3 weeks, all the leafy greens popped up, and I had salad. Of course, tomatoes didn't come till later, I didn't realize that. So I never really got a full salad, but I did. I learned a lot of things. I'm going to tell you some things I learned. The 3 weeks after that, I did get the tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and other things. And one of the immediate things you might know is, well, of course, this is much fresher, and that's great. But what I didn't expect was that it's fresher and also it's not refrigerated, because I'm picking things as I need them. I don't need to refrigerate them. I just go out when I'm ready to cook, or even if I'm going to eat something raw, and I just pick what I need right then. In fact, sometimes I'm eating these vegetables and I don't think they even know that they're dead yet because I've just pulled them off the vine. So what was great though was the taste, and I did not expect that they would taste that much better. And that led to me trying other vegetables like green beans, fresh green beans. I normally don't like the ones from the supermarket. They seem bitter to me. Eggplants, no thanks. But I love them, coming out of my own garden, never having been refrigerated. Something about it, and there's probably some psychological factors at play, of the pride of having grown them, but things tasted better and I ate a better variety and more vegetables than I had previously. The other thing I expected was that there'd be some work involved in shoveling and gardening, but I didn't expect as much work from weeding and even harvesting, because when you're trying to reach into a raised bed without stepping into it, you have to contort yourself and really reach and inspect before you can harvest things with 2 hands often. You're using scissors. It felt like a yoga workout when I was done. I'd spend half an hour in my garden weeding and tending to things and harvesting, and I'd be kind of sore. So it was actually quite a workout. And in fact, there's some therapeutic effects of having a garden too. There's researchers at the University of Colorado in Boulder found benefits of touching the soil bacteria from vegetable soil that had therapeutic effects on inflammation, stress, depression, and even asthma. Psychologically, there's the great effect of coming home after a bad day of work and going out to your garden, and your garden is always better than it was the next day. It just keeps improving, it keeps growing. In fact, there's a certain inherent future hope that you've got. Anytime you plant something, you've got the knowledge that there's something in the future for you. And another, even more important psychological benefit is that of feeling really like you've released yourself from the dependencies on other things. Think about all the things that you really depend on other people for. What you need day to day to live would be air, water, and food. And imagine if your power went out in your house or your whole town for months or a whole year. You're going to find air, you're going to find water, but you're going to have trouble finding food. So it is a feeling of knowing that you could cut it on your own if you had to. And that's particularly useful to me because as a Notes application developer, I know that someday Notes is going to die, but I am not going to starve. So I want you to think about the urban gardener as you, maybe not this year, but some year, grow something. Start simple. Start with something easy, like tomatoes or cucumbers or kale. Those are really easy to grow and they're useful vegetables. And you can do it in a very small scale, even if you live in an apartment. If you're one-third of the world's population that lives as an urban dweller, you've got options for apartment windows and balconies. There are even kits you can buy online for window farming. Google that term. And they don't even use soil, some of them. They're hydroponic. You can also grow things in pots indoors. You may have access to a rooftop garden, which would be great, or a community garden where you can lease a raised bed like what you see here with soil and water included for like $40 for the whole season. And it's also a great way to collaborate with other farmers in your community. If you do have a backyard lot, like me, you don't have to do raised beds as I did. In fact, in my next growing season, I'm going to start distributing some of my vegetable plants around the yard and incorporate them into the landscape. They grow just fine. They don't all need to be contained like that. The New York Times columnist Michael Pollan wrote a very interesting article about 8 years ago on what we can do about global climate change. And the thing he concluded was the most actionable piece of advice that we as citizens can do to help reverse climate change is to grow even just a portion of our own food. And I would add to that that not only is that good for the earth, but that's good for us too. It's good for us psychologically, physically, and it's good for community as well. So I hope that you can benefit from some aspect of this inspiration someday, if you're not already, and that you'll take that and pass that on to your children and your community as well. Thanks very much.